there is a sort of energy crisis.
It's a big problem and it's only getting bigger.
We were trying to offer a very energy efficient solution. 20 years or 30 years or so, the total energy consumption by compute is going to be plateaued.
Welcome to Tea Talks, the podcast where we break down the journeys of game changers, innovators, and leaders transforming industries and communities alike. It's more than just success stories. We dive deep into the experiences, challenges, and triumphs that define their paths. At Tea Talks, we dive into the stories of the leaders changing our world. I'm your host, TJ Walia. My next guest is an individual who's been playing around with AI before it actually became cool. Raymond, welcome to Tea Talks.
Thank you, TJ, for having me on your Tea Talk.
Yeah, it's a true pleasure, Raymond, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And I'll start with the first question. We'll get right into it. You were talking about AI before it even became a buzzword, right? Like if I look at your background, your profile, you've been dabbling with it, you've been touching it, you've been playing with it, and what did you see that others didn't see at the time?
I started getting into the AI business, particularly the semiconductor portion, because I've been a semiconductor guy for a long time. That was about 6, 7 years ago when I started looking into it with my co-founder, Martin Snellgrove. Back then, AI, as you said, hasn't been a buzzword. That's why we started. We named our company Untether AI. Nowadays, everybody names their company something AI, but back then it wasn't a thing yet. The people were starting to aware that the AI is going to be a thing down the road. What made it possible was the semiconductor, the compute infrastructures that allows some of these at in those days 10 years ago, these newer generation of neural networks, CNNs, convolutional neural network, be able to run on the computer that is fast enough to be able to support those type of training and calculations. And we saw that apart from the advent of semiconductor compute, um, we also saw that there wasn't anyways a energy efficient enough architecture to go around to support these type of specialized math and calculations that these neural networks requires. And therefore we thought, hey, we should do something about it. And the reason why we thought we should do something about it is mostly actually my co-founder Martin Snellgrove. Actually, in the mid 90s, he had when he was still a professor, he had created something called computational memory as a research. And back then, it was a bit too early. It was a nice piece of research, generated a few papers and patents. But about 6, 7 years ago, we realized that hey, this technology can fit quite well into solving the energy hog problem that we were foreseeing with AI compute. So that's kind of how this whole thing started for us.
Very cool, Raymond. And so, given the path that you guys are on, what do you guys do today in your organization? Is that the problem you're solving? Is the energy consumption and requirements, or is there anything more within your organization? What are you doing today?
Still solving and providing solution for highly energy efficient compute. And within the context of Untether AI, we've just submitted a MLPerf submission, which is a public benchmark for AI acceleration hardware. The NVIDIAs of the world, the AMDs, would submit into this benchmark to get performance numbers certified, if you
Okay.
will, and become a benchmark for people to evaluate what kind of performance a hardware can achieve under a pretty strict certification evaluation process. And Untether AI just published a world-beating, energy-efficient engine, the product AI accelerator card with our own AI accelerator chip. At least numbers that came out. At least if you look at the publications, you see we're anywhere from 3 times to 6 times better power performance metric than the leading solutions out there.
And congratulations on that. I mean, that's a big accomplishment there to have numbers that are outperforming some of the greatest names that are out there. But Raymond, in terms of the efficiency aspect versus the performance, how big of a problem do you foresee this to continue to be?
It's a big problem. When we started about 6, 7 years ago, this wasn't something that people, the general public, were talking about. But there are companies that had foreseen this problem coming and started to create and offer or design solutions that are more energy efficient than existing hardware can provide. Nowadays, a lot more people are aware of the energy problem. And for example, just to put things in perspective, if you go and ask a Dolly 2 to generate an image for you, you go to the prompt and asking it, hey, give me a picture of Raymond with a cigar in the right hand, whiskey on the left hand, standing on stage singing. You give it this prompt and it gives you a picture. That actually, the energy required to generate that picture can be as high as a full cell phone charge.
Wow. Wow. I don't think many people know this. I don't think many people
Right.
understand this.
Yeah. So this is something that I've read from Lincoln Research Lab and other sources. So obviously, it's not every pictures are like that, but you kind of see the scale of energy consumption. And
Absolutely.
if you keep the same trajectory for a hardware infrastructure that lives in the behind, that powers these neural networks for generative AI and run these workload. And there are also other charts from SRC, which is Silicon Research Council, that publishes for forward-looking trends. In particular, they predict that if the compute infrastructure trajectory keeps going like we are right now, the total energy consumption by compute is going to be plateaued in 20 years or 30 years or so because of the total energy production of the world is capping that limit.
Interesting. Interesting.
So there is a sort of energy crisis if you don't do something about it because of the advent of AI compute and all that.
Wow. I mean, it's a big problem and it's only getting bigger, right? Because
Yes.
the number of devices, the number of concepts of smart cities, we haven't even dabbled into smart cities yet. And that alone, with the computational power that's going to be required, it's unimaginable at this stage, right?
Yes,
So
exactly,
we're definitely
exactly.
just
So
getting
we
started.
have, and the other point that kind of I'd like to make here about energy is that, and you are starting to hear about people building data centers. They want a nuclear power plant right beside it.
And are we going to be able to do it? I mean, is that something you foresee happening, or is it still going to be challenges? And is that challenge what's going to slow down the innovation that we're trying to build?
Well, my perspective on that is the innovation is going to be driven towards people trying to come up with more energy efficient solutions. Not only from my perspective, it's semiconductor building chips, making hardware that runs really efficient. But my world is only a significant to small part of the full AI stack because you've got your um, building infrastructure, not the electronics, but when you build a data center, the thermal management, cooling, how you build it. There are building technologies that allows these data center to cool down much more efficiently. So there's a bunch of technology in there, and also the cooling technology itself on these computer servers and racks, airflows, obviously the semiconductor, the hardware themselves, and then the firmware and software on top of that, and the models people are building that sits on top of these hardware, and also then the application that's people are building for users to use, and all the full stack, each and every single layer requires innovations that drives towards a full stack energy efficient solution. So every single layer has we need to think about how do we make the whole AI stack more efficient.
Yeah, that's and there's complexities at every stage, like you're saying. It's not like it's a simple solution. You fix this one problem and it fixes everything. There's
Exactly.
complexities at every stage of that journey, which
Yes,
is quite
exactly,
fascinating.
exactly. Even with our sort of a bit narrow focus into creating a very efficient semiconductor for AI acceleration, that's only one part of it. Because once you put into your even your server rack, your CPUs, your server, and your connectivity, these are all energy consuming components. And if you squeeze one part of, if you have the world's most efficient AI accelerator, for example, you get very small energy, but then other energy starts popping up. So you've got to solve a lot more things than just the chip.
Amazing. And what inspired you to go after solving this problem? I mean, given AI is a vast range of different areas you can plug into, given your background, given your experience, what really took you on the path of, hey, this is the problem I want to solve, as opposed to, because I'm sure you had many other ideas as an entrepreneur, as a startup guy, as a an individual who's been in this space for a long time. I'm sure you get a lot of different ideas, different motives, different exciting pulls from different organizations. Why this?
First of all, there is a realization of sort of proven technology that my co-founder had created a long time ago, and we'd like to make use of it. And as you say, as a tech guy, putting my engineer's hat on, there's a lot of things, shiny objects. Oh, you go. This technology is cool. Should we go after that? The other technology is also cool. Should we go? Should I go after that? And the problem for a lot of sort of less experienced technical people is from a startup perspective, creating business perspective, you often kind of go after the technologies that you like and feels cool about. This is great. This solves this create a performance much better than all the other things. But the thing is, the more important thing, actually, as you know, is product market fit. Whether there is a requirement, there's a need to the market. And at the time, we felt that this type of technology that we already have on hand, although not quite mature yet because it was kind of research, fits quite well. We felt, I mean, this is just from the guts. It feels quite well to fit that kind of requirement, because back then, most people were still trying to create fast enough semiconductor to be able to run those networks, neural networks. But there's less talk about energy efficient hardware. And that's, I think, where we want to slot into sort of a niche idea back then. Plus, based on our past experience before we started going to the AI route, we were already heavily involved in developing semiconductors for edge and IoT application sensor. So from that perspective, we are very power sensitive. Developing those semiconductors kind of put us in our mind saying that, okay, the world needs very low power semiconductors, and that kind of naturally leads to this type of thought where we want to
Very cool.
create an energy efficient AI compute.
Very cool. And you touched on something in the startup world that you go with what you have in your gut. So it's like a gut feeling this is the right direction, the right path. Any business institution will come in and say, or a financial institution who's going to be providing any sort of funding or support for a business says, what's your business plan? What's your outlook on this business?
When we started, I would at Untether AI anyways. I think I might have explained that to you. How that name came about was we wanted to create AI compute solutions on the edge, untethered from the data centers and servers. Applications like autonomous driving, your cell phone, and back then I still am very fond of using example of the Iron Man suit. You wear the suit, you fly around, and then he talks to Jarvis, and that's an AI. And the aspiration was to, can we do Jarvis without connecting back to his home? Right, so that would be the edge computing, and that's why because we were trying to offer a very energy efficient solution, and therefore we started thinking edge. Back then, the edge AI wasn't really a thing, and even though we sort of tried to see if um, there's application for that, we can see application. That's the thing, we can see application, but is there a market for that? The conclusion back then was there wasn't a obvious big enough market. It was very segmented. There's different things here. People back then, there was still Google Glass, if you remember, but
Yep.
that failed. And autonomous driving was still in the very infancy. But so we didn't pivot, but we used the same technology, but sort of targeted back then more into the data center application, which already was a thing. So we knew that there was a big market, big need for that. So, and we didn't need to tackle very many small different customers. So that's kind of the direction that we pivoted from the business, from a business side, pivoted from more edge focus into more data center focus. But now data center business is still big, but there's a lot of competitors, big names. The giants are there, but there's a lot more edge AI talks being happening now, and you're starting to see um, laptop manufacturers putting out AI computers, AI laptops. So the edge AI sort of is coming, and there are a lot more companies that is creating very low energy, extreme edge, if you will, applications. From data center to edge, you see the business case becoming more solid over on the edge nowadays. And so, if you were to write a business plan now, going after the edge, which would be the same as the business plan where at the very beginning and starting from zero, like say 7 years ago. Think of the edge, because kind of
And I think, and I want to dig on the startup and the business side of it. The limitation isn't the concept or the idea. The limitation is how much does the other party understand it. If you took that same business plan back then to any of the big banks and said, "Hey, this is what we're trying to do, and we need some financing," they'd probably laugh and say, "This is we don't understand what this is. We don't understand the use case. Go away." But you went again with the exact same business plan today because of their understanding and their knowledge. All of a
yes,
sudden, they're jumping into it, as are investors and angel investors and everyone else. Um,
yeah.
so from that, anyone who's now looking at it or through their journey, looking at building a concept because they've got a gut feeling that this is something that is a need from a startup perspective, what's your advice to them?
Stay passionate. That's kind of my top thing. From speaking from my own perspective, the thing that kind of got me going is you believe in something, stay passionate about it, and just go after it. But there is maybe a fine line between being passionate and being stubborn. From an investor's perspective, now I'm sort of taking off my entrepreneur's hat and putting on angel investor's hat. When you talk to founders, when I talk to founders, and I often try to figure out whether they have the passion to carry their belief forward. In a startup, you often hit glitches and pitfalls, and you're gonna be down for a little bit, and can't find money. And if you don't have the passion and perseverance and belief, then it's sometimes you will find yourself, at least from an investor perspective, I might find, okay, this path is walking to nowhere. And when is the right time to change course? So I don't think there's a lot of science. At least for me, there's a lot of science in there. It's basically, again, back to my gut feeling, because I'm a gut feeling guy. and and if I see a founder team that is passionate enough to carry things forward with perseverance, and also, um, maybe coachable is a cliche ish, but you listen to other people's advice and evaluate your situation. You have to be able to come up to a conclusion in the right time that this is going to a dead end. I need to find another path to go forward. So those are the main thing that I'm looking for.
No, I like that. I
And
like that. And so now let me ask you this: if you were to start all over again, you've been as a startup founder, you've been as an angel investor. What would you do, or what's your advice to someone coming out of the gates? Do you come out and build an MVP, build a concept, prove it, sell it, and then go, or would you go in and say, take the concept, talk to the right investor, raise the money, invest it, and scale fast? What are your thoughts?
I would tend to, um, advise might be a heavy word, but recommend startup founders to stay lean and be capital efficient as long as possible. If And also, if possible, bootstrap as long as possible. It's not always easy to do. I've done bootstrapping, I've done fundraising, but nowadays, if you can possibly find a way to bootstrap without getting VC money, perhaps leverage on government funding, non-dilutive funding, to get you going from a prototyping perspective, proving out your idea, and more importantly, talk to customers, talk to potential customers. If you can find a sort of lead customers who are interested in your idea and are willing to spend time to walk the initial path with you to define or fine tune your idea, that would be the best scenario, because you don't want to create a product based on technical excellence only. You create a product to solve a problem, and if you talk to a customer, they are seeing the real problem that they're seeing. So you at least are solving someone's problem. May not be everyone's problem, but that's a good start, and that's an important start.
I love that advice, Raymond. It just gives you the customer validation through that whole journey. And once you have that customer
Exactly.
validation, any investor, any financial institution, any business, that's what they need. And if they have that as the first key element, they can move on to the rest of it. No, so thank you for sharing that, Raymond. That one moment in your career that changed everything for you. Is there a moment like that you had? What would that be?
That particular moment actually was a pivotal moment for me to, shaped who I am now in terms of a semiconductor chip design engineer. So I consider myself mostly a chip design engineer. So that was a third when I was at third year, taking an electronics course, sort of basic electronics course. The a professor back then, also my mentor friend, unfortunately, Professor Casey Smith, passed away last fall, last year. And so he was the that took taking that course. He taught me completely different perspective of how you look at, for my profession, um, from a professional training perspective, how to look at circuit design in a way that is not really right out of the textbook, not based on equation, but it's based on intuition, based on for basic understanding. And it might be an abstract concept to most people, but taking that course was a pivotal point for me to, okay, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, and I did.
Amazing. And so on mentorship, let's touch on that. Beyond that, do you take and keep mentors along every stage of the journey, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, or is it you kind of tap into them when you need them? What's your take on mentorship there?
When I was 20, 30 years old, I would tell myself that, okay, attach yourself to a mentor and or multiple mentors to help my career development, but I didn't do that. So it was more and sort of as needed. I didn't really, I personally had not really seeked out mentorship to go after. But luckily, all through my career, I have constantly been able to attach myself to people who are much more smarter and more experienced than me, and I can learn from them. And the other person that I want to call out is my co-founder Martin Snellgrove, who used to be a professor when I was a student. So he acted as a mentor figure for me. But we've been doing startups for 20 years together, and that relationship was very tight, and I see him as a friend, partner, and mentor. So I was lucky enough to be able to surround myself with talented people.
Amazing. Your advice to someone who needs to seek out that mentor or has not done it, what's the approach to it? Because I think a lot of people, especially now in the digital age, it's hard to connect and build that relationship with people. It's easier to connect, I should say, because you can easily send a message, but that actual connection, that bond, is not the same anymore as it used to be when you're actually sitting down, whether it's in the cafeteria, whether you're grabbing a bite to eat, doing all of those motions together. That relationship would, be a lot more stronger than what we build out today. What's your advice to someone that needs that mentor, that should look for that mentor, and how do they go and get one?
You need the physical connection. You go grab a coffee with someone and chat about things. That would be a minimum start to create a mentor mentee relationship. Now, how do we get someone that is much more experienced than you to come out to for a coffee? You just go ask. You'd be surprised um, if you go cold call a certain experienced person, professional that you think that can help you. You just go ask them. I'm a student aspiring to be a so and so, an engineer, an entrepreneur. Love your background, your experience. May I get some advice from you? And a lot of times, experienced people are actually willing if they have the time, obviously. So you just don't be afraid to go out and say to introduce yourself and ask for advice, ask for mentorship. Can we have a coffee? Can we have a video call? Start from there. You ask if you ask 10 people, you ask 50 people, there's someone will respond to you.
Amazing. So make it a mission, but make it a deliberate mission of the people you
Yes,
really want to work with, not just randomly blasting out messages to everyone saying, "Hey, can I?" It's a waste of your time and their time at that point. But if you're very deliberate, you know what you're trying to seek, you know what you're trying to get out of that relationship, then absolutely you send that message out. And to your point, that's, I get messages from some bold people, and sometimes they're creative messages. I do
yes,
respond where I can. I can,
exactly.
if we have the bandwidth, and I will dedicate some time to at least have a virtual coffee or something where I can provide some guidance or direction. Some of them turn into friendships. Some of them turn into just one transactional conversation, and everyone and people are on their way. Either way, people are looking to provide that information and that guidance back when and where they can, if time permits. So
Exactly,
you're
exactly.
you're spot on with that, Raymond. Thank you for that. Raymond, we're going to switch gears now. We're going to go into
Okay,
our rapid fire segment. So,
okay.
rapid fire is pretty straightforward. I'm going to ask you a question, and whatever the first thing comes to your mind, you kind of say it out and see what your answer is. It's a number of questions, but you ready to go with this?
Sure, let's go for it.
Okay. So, first one: coffee or tea? It's usually easy.
Coffee.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl, but trying to transition into a morning person.
Amazing, amazing. Favorite tech gadget?
Um, Smartphone.
Okay,
Yeah, so
that's a heck of a gadget. It's got everything in it.
yeah, so yeah, it's just on top of my head kind of thing.
Yeah. Most inspiring business book.
Wow. Business book. I actually don't read a lot of business book, so I don't have anything that I can offer to you
Podcast?
up on podcast. All in podcast.
All in. Okay. Yeah, I love that one too. Your go-to productivity hack.
Um, I want to say a to-do list, but that's kind of cliche. But that's what I. But what that's what I do.
Okay. Favorite city for tech events.
Santa Clara.
Okay. One word that describes your leadership style.
It's charisma.
Last question. If animals could talk, which would you want to have a conversation with?
Doc.
A dog. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Raymond, thank you very much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation. I took a lot of insights and tools from you, and I hope our listeners will get to do the same. Thank you very much again, Raymond.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I had a blast.